Although the sons of King Aegon III, Daeron and Baelor, were dead well before their time, his three daughters did yet live, and there were some amongst the small folk, and even a few lords, who felt the Iron Throne should by rights now pass to Princess Daena. However, many of these lords only spoke of this idea in hushed corners of the Red Keep, as many feared the division that may occur as such an idea. But ultimately, the supporters of Daena were few and never had the power of influence to effectively challenge for the rights of Daena. Something vital that must also be considered is a decade of isolation from the outside world and everyday court life in the Maiden Vault had left Daena and her sisters without any powerful allies, or really any allies of influence at all. There was also the lingering memory of Rhaenyra Targaryen and her short rule in King's Landing during the Dance of the Dragons, and the woes that had befallen the realm when last a woman sat the Iron Throne were still fresh, though slowly beginning to heal. Daena the Defiant was seen by many lords as being a wild and unmanageable, and wanton as well. For years earlier, she had given birth to a bastard son she named Daemon, whose sire she had steadfastly refused to name for many years. It was an unspoken secret at court during the reign of King Baelor that Daemon Waters, whom would later be known as Daemon Blackfyre, was indeed the son of Prince Aegon, the Hand, and now King's eldest son. But largely, Daena's claim was dismissed using the precedents of the Great Council of 101 AC and the Dance of the Dragons, and the claims of Baelor's sisters were set aside. Instead, the crown passed to his uncle, the King's Hand, King Viserys, the second of his name, the second son of Rhaenyra Targaryen and Prince Daemon Targaryen. It has been written that while Daeron the Young Dragon warred in Dawn and Baelor prayed with his septons, Viserys ruled. That Prince Viserys was the true power behind the Iron Throne for both, and also a loyal shadow at his brother's side during his troubled reign. In total, for 14 years he served as Hand to his nephews, and before them he served his brother loyally. History remembers him as perhaps the shrewdest Hand since Septon Bath, a long-time hand to the legendary King Jaehaerys. Though for Viserys, his good efforts were diminished in the reign of the Broken King, who lacked any desire to please his subjects or win their love. In his book, The Lives of Four Kings, Grandmaster Keith seems to hold little opinion, good or bad, of Viserys, but there are those who say that by rights, the book should be about 5 kings, Viserys included, and yet, Viserys is passed over for a discussion of his son, Aegon the Unworthy, instead. Thus, many tend to forget the good work Viserys did as both king and hand in a life dedicated to service to the realm and his family. After his years as a hostage in Lys following the Dance of the Dragons, Viserys returned to King's Landing with a beautiful Lyseni bride, Lara Royer, the daughter of a wealthy and influential noble house. Tall and willowy, with the silver gold hair and purple eyes of Valyria, as Valyrian blood still runs strong in Lys. She was 7 years Viserys' elder. She was also a woman who never felt part of the court, and was never truly happy in Westeros. Yet she did give him 3 children before she had last returned home to her native Lys. The eldest was Aegon, born in the Red Keep in 135 AC, after Viserys had returned from Lys. He was a robust lad who grew to be handsome and charming, and also irresponsible and capricious, devoted to his pleasures. He caused his father much trouble and toil, and the realm much pain in the years to come. In 136 AC, Aemon the Dragon Knight followed. He was as robust as Aegon as an infant, and as beautiful to look upon, but his brother's faults were not in him. He proved the greatest jouster and swordsman of his age, a knight worthy to bear the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister. He became known as the Dragon Knight for his 3-headed dragon crest, wrought in white gold upon his helm. To this very day, some call him the noblest knight who ever lived, and one of the most storied names ever to serve in the Kingsguard. The last of Viserys' children, his only daughter, Nerys, was born in 138 AC. It is said she had skin so pale that it seemed almost translucent. She was small of frame and made smaller by having very little appetite, with very fine features, and singers wrote songs in praise of her eyes, a deep violet in hue, and very large, framed by her pale lashes. She loved Aemon best of her brothers, for he knew how to make her laugh, and he had something of the same piety that she possessed, or Aegon did not. She loved the Seven as dearly as she loved her brother, if not more so, and might have been a sceptre if her Lord Father had allowed it, but he did not, and Viserys instead insisted she wed her brother, his son, Aegon, in 153 AC, with King Aegon III's blessing. The singers say that Aemon and Nerys both wept during the ceremony, though the histories tell us Aemon quarrelled with Aegon at the wedding feast, that Nerys wept during the wedding, rather than the wedding itself. There are those who write that many of the follies of Daeron the Young Dragon and Baelor the Blessed originated in Prince Viserys, and encouraged by him as he plotted to eventually claim the crown for himself, while others argue that Viserys moderated the worst of their obsessions as best he could, and given the little evidence we do have through court records, and what we know of the character of the man, it does seem that Viserys was attempting to moderate the worst of the follies of his nephews, which does seem to fit well. Though the reign itself of King Viserys II lasted little more of 2 years, one of the shortest reigns of any of the Targaryen kings, it is instructive to consider his reforms of the royal household and its functions, which the impacts of can still be felt at court in the Baratheon era. Having served as Hand for many years, he knew best what troubled the realm. In this, he worked to secure the establishment of a new royal mint as part of his wider efforts to increase trade across the Narrow Sea. Parts of this involved revisions of the code of laws that Jaehaerys the Conciliator had established during his long reign. While the changes were only minor, they became a huge benefit to merchants, traders, and any common worker among the small folk, no matter if they were rich or poor. Given what Viserys II had achieved in such little time, there were many who felt that within him, Viserys had the capacity to be a new conciliator, for no king had ever been shrewder or more capable. But sadly for Westeros and House Targaryen, this new, potentially legendary king was not to be, and for the most part, his important contribution to the history of the Seven Kingdoms is reduced to a footnote in the dusty pages of history books, in large part due to the direct events that preceded and followed his reign. Tragically, King Viserys II suddenly became extremely ill in 172 AC. Despite the work of the best maesters, the illness could not be halted or managed, and sadly for Westeros and the sons and daughters of House Targaryen, the illness carried him away. King Viserys II Targaryen died at the age of just 52, just over 2 years into his reign. His death was a shock to many due to its sudden nature. However, many, both at court and within the small folk, took solace in the fact that the succession was more than secure. It need not be said that some found the sudden illness of King Viserys and its swiftness in killing him more than a little bit suspicious, but none dared to speak of their suspicions at the time, for there was in truth little tangible proof. It would be more than a decade before the first accusations were put to paper that Viserys had been poisoned by none other than his successor, his son, Aegon. Is there truth to this suspicion? We cannot say for certain, and given the political turmoil at the time of this revelation, political propaganda cannot be overlooked. But what must be said is that given all the infamous and corrupt deeds of Aegon the Unworthy, both before and after he assumed the crown, it cannot be discounted he did indeed have a hand in the sudden death of his father.